One, and we are recording with Dr. Aaron Williams. And please introduce yourself, my man. Episode 629 for all the listeners.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it. So my name is Aaron Williams. I'm an anesthesiologist, physician, MD medical school on to anesthesia training. I grew up in a small town and eventually made my way to medical school after high school and chose my path from there. I was going to do pediatrics, kind of moved on and decided once I got into anesthesia, I was going to do that maybe with a pediatric bend. Didn't work out that way. God leads us different places. Then I went to Emory for my anesthesia training, parked right next to the CDC for quite a bit of that, and never thought twice about it. And now I've learned. But then from there, I spent a couple of years in academics and won a teaching award while I was there during that time. I love to teach. I love to kind of spread knowledge and help people help other people. So more than you can just get your hands on it a day. And then from there, I got a job offer to go into private practice about 10 years ago. So I've been there. And then during that time frame, I've been involved in a lot of administrative work and different things like that. Been chairman of the anesthesia department for multiple years, helped lead up a lot of different things, had a lot of great colleagues and people to work with over time. And, since that time, over the last year, it's been kind of process of awakening and kind of figuring out, okay, all these things didn't make sense. You start digging, then you start to find the truth and you find there's evidence, to back up these truths that say that, things aren't as they seem. And so that's kind of long story short, how we're here.
Yeah. I've had so many people ask me, they're like, dude, why are you so like hell bent on discussing COVID? And I'm like, I'm actually not. Like, I like talking about the Cold War. I like talking about UFOs and aliens. I like laughing. But it's kind of one of those things where, just talk things like, I always use this example, organic chemistry. I loved organic chemistry because there was no nuance. It wasn't literature. And what do you think the author meant? I loved it. A lot like math. It's like, this is the answer. It's the thing. It doesn't care about your feelings. This is what it is. Gravity is 9.81 meters per second. Doesn't matter what your skin color is. Doesn't matter where you were born. It's just what it is. I like that objective truth. And then, as you probably appreciate as well, the process of learning the truth. There's when you start pulling on a string and it doesn't even have to be some big investigative, about COVID. It can just be a genetics class. There's just something fascinating about building Legos and it starts coming together and you go, oh, this is the thing. It's just one of the joys of life. So when people ask me why I'm so hell-bent on this, I'm not at all. I like talking about aircraft and stuff, but like when you start tugging on it and there starts to be like violent feedback, like don't talk about this, don't discuss this. And all right, well, I'm not a doctor. How about I get on Dr. Malone or Dr. McCullough? And people are still, kind of throwing the holy, like demons with holy water. Stop talking. Permanently banned from YouTube. Yeah. And you're like, what is going on? And now this is just me, not a medical professional with this interest. You, an actual MD, you're starting to look at it and you're like, hey guys, this shouldn't be like an opinion stance thing. This is what is going on. How can it be treated? And are there financial interests and power interests over this? So what kind of led on your path to, I guess, tugging at the metaphorical strings?
Yeah, I think I had a general distrust of media after watching, not just slight variations on the truth, but 180 degrees flip from the truth, verifiably.
Yeah.
And so I always had that, but I never really thought that I needed to bring that same skepticism towards our own regulatory bodies, like the CDC, for instance. I never imagined it. I figured there'd be a little bit of shading, a little bit of greed factor here and there with what gets pushed through from the FDA, but nothing on like a grander scale. I thought evil existed just in small pockets of the occasional Jeffrey Dahmer or something horrid like that, or you've got, the cartel type stuff. But I never really thought it could exist on a bigger scale and in higher places. And as the year went along last year, I never really believed the China, the bat narrative, that sort of stuff. But I'm not surprised by China lying. Like none of us are, right?
Yeah.
So, but later on in the summertime, we were tracking daily. I know a lot of places were tracking daily the amount of ICU beds that were being taken up and the amount of hospital beds being taken up by patients and or COVID patients as well. But specifically, they were keeping track of that. And so here in Minnesota, and I don't bring it any more local than that, but
Sure.
in Minnesota, the Minnesota Department of Health had that daily. So they would update it. I can't recall how often they'd update it, but we would be canceling surgeries based upon that. So, because some of the surgeries are going to need admitted afterwards if it's a big enough surgery versus the outpatient surgeries you're planning to go home. So we were doing this by the day, and sometime it was June or July, and all of a sudden I went on there to look and it was gone. And this is after a period where all of the numbers were starting to look better. And of course, I understand and I see some degree of validity to not getting people to be too lax. But when you're looking at that, this wasn't just regular Joes and Janes out there looking at this daily tracker on how many hospital beds and ICU beds we're taking up. This is probably just medical professionals and these institutions, frankly, that are using that information. And when that disappeared, that was another like big warning flag to me. I said, well, I expect China to lie, but why does our Department of Health take off the graphs that are super important just when they start looking better? Like, why is that? We've had them up for months. We've been doing it for 3 months or more at that time. So that was kind of another one. And then as we got to rolling out across the country, and they had a lot of anaphylaxis, severe allergy cases the first day when they rolled out in the UK. And I said, well, to be fair, you're having more than 20,000 people probably that first day compared to the trials. But I wanted to know why. And the UK had started to either advise against entirely or just kind of put out a cautionary measure for anybody who had even severe allergies to potentially not take the vaccine. It's not a vaccine. I'm just going to say that for simplicity's sake. It's an mRNA therapy. They changed the definition. Okay, we got that out of the way.
But it's good. We're already banned from YouTube. It's fine. We can speak the truth now. It's fine.
There you go. And so I went digging, and what I ended up finding was a very well-known, not well-known, should I say, but well-documented. There was evidence, even if it wasn't widely known, which is a lot of our conundrum at the moment, speaking in a very general sense, that these PEG, polyethylene glycol allergies were quite prevalent. And that's what they encapsulate both the Moderna and the Pfizer mRNA inside. And I started digging on this and I said, wow, there's a study from 2016 from UNC, really well done study. I think they had around 16,000 patients. And they found that the prevalence of at least some allergy within the population was 72%. And the percentage of a high allergy was about 8% of the population, just kind of all comers. And there's a lot of reasons. It's in cosmetics and it's in other things, foods, some different things, but it's such a big polymer that it doesn't penetrate into your bloodstream. So you might get a little bit in a crack, you're putting something here or a crack in your skin, or maybe some gastritis in your GI tract, whatever it is. People get exposed enough through a constant barrage of this stuff via various products. And so the population develops this allergy. And in these different articles I was finding, and even on the manufacturer of PEG's websites, they were talking about the allergies and the anaphylaxis possibility. And at the end of this, they're talking about, at the end of the study, they're talking about, multiple drugs that have been taken off of the market. I believe that was a separate reference, forgive me. But they were talking multiple drugs have been taken off the market. So anytime it gets injected, that's when it can cause a potentially severe reaction, because now it's obviously you put it in, it couldn't get in before it's too big of a polymer. And at the end of this study, really well done study, they said anybody you're going to inject with polyethylene glycol needs to have a study to see if they have an allergy prior. I use allergy rather than antibodies. They use the term antibodies, but we've been false dichotomied into antibodies or no antibodies when our immune system is so much more than that. And predictably, those antibodies levels go down over time, right? And so, but that was what they said. And I looked around and I said, wait a minute, we've got basically the entirety of the country. And the question wasn't if you were going to get a vaccine. It wasn't when you were going to get a vaccine. It was how fast can we get 100% of people vaccinated, with no regard anymore to natural immunity. Like, it didn't exist. It's not that novel of a bioweapon, guys. Don't give yourself that much credit. God still got this figured out if you make it through it. It's just true. It's true. Not that people having, obviously passed away from it from lack of early treatment, mostly, right? Like Dr. Peter McCullough and the AAPS have been pushing, and Pierre Corey and his groups and many others. But I'm looking around going, wait a minute, we're doing 100%. there's these studies that say we should be testing any person before you inject them with it. And yet there's not a word being whispered anywhere. And I said, wow, this is beyond like shading. This is more than unethical. Like something is really wrong here from a trust and otherwise perspective. That kind of stuff got me digging really hard, along with other things in society and stuff going on that are just completely backwards. So I kind of stopped there. So, but that was the long story on kind of where I really started to dig.
No, it's brilliant because I love hearing about. It's like when, well, this is kind of like a dark. No, let's not use a dark analogy. We'll use a good analogy. It's like watching a team win the Super Bowl or the world. I used to live in Atlanta, so did you. The Braves just won. I don't care. I don't really pay attention to sports, but you can watch like the official, the ESPN, the 8K camera zoomed in, and you see the final out. But then you can go online. I see all my friends, and some are posting some were there, and you see like the iPhone. Some were recording the TV, and you see everyone cheering and the beer flying, and you can see all these different recordings and thus experiences of the same event. And so what I'm saying is it's always fascinating to hear what are other individuals sort of awakening to put it in a less formal term. Something's a little funky, something's a little fucky, right? So it's, again, I can look at it, but it's through my own, how am I viewing the world? I have my preconceived notions, I have my own political biases, my own religious and national, but then you have on Dr. Malone, who invented it, and you're like, all right, well, that's odd. And then you have on I've had on like a dentist from Toronto who was like, this is the little thing I saw. And then you have McCullough, and he's like, this is what I saw. George Fareed, who is like, I'm treating people with ivermectin who are in their 80s and they're getting better in 12 hours. You see a Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers and Nicki Minaj, you all these little things. So when you come on and now you're just telling your story, I think it's very important to sort of talk about how you figured it out, because like that final World Series out, when you start to look at it from all these different angles, right? It's like a 3D model of it's like Google Earth or something, like a 3D model where you zoom in on Manhattan, you stitch together from thousands of different photos. And the more photos you have, the better and more accurate representation of the objective thing, the Empire State Building, you can get. So I think it's very important to talk about, just, I had never heard that, the hospital beds going away, or the how quickly can we get everyone vaccinated. And we're like, hey guys, wait. It's I've had on, I know I'm rambling now. I've had on Dr. Ken Alabek, the first deputy director of Biopreparat, the Soviet Union's bioweapon program.
Oh,
He
wow.
defected to the US in 92. They were putting Ebola and Marburg in the heads of ICBMs. I mean, real James Bond, Dr. Evil shit. Stephen Hatfill, Dr. Nass, these anthrax experts. There is definitely sure, maybe the discussion should be how quickly can we vaccinate 100% of the population if it's weaponized Ebola. But this gets weird when you're like, hey, it's not to make light of the people who've died, but hey, man, like 99.7% survival rate. What's going on? And you start to pull on that string, and it's, okay, well, now we have these corporations who are, they're immune from legal repercussions. They're making record-breaking profits.
Yeah.
There's never let a tragedy go to waste. There's huge evidence here for let's boost government programs. Let's crack down on control. I mean, this is a dictator's wet dream. You can no longer travel. You can no longer go into this store. You spoke out against this. Uh-oh, there goes your COVID pass.
Yeah.
All these little things start to piece together, as Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone both say. You almost want to ignore it, because the image that's coming together is too dark to really grasp. It's too dark to come to terms with. And not to put words in your mouth, I speak for myself, obviously not for you, but it, like you said, you think there are these pockets of evil, a Jeffrey Dahmer, an ISIS cell, and there's kind of these things where you're like, that's what happens. There's evil in the world. But CDC, FDA, Sanjay Gupta going on Rogan, I used to feel so smart and snooty in college when I was pre-med, and when I would eat lunch, I would watch Dr. Sanjay Gupta, like, pat myself, look us, and he's sitting there going like, this is horse paste. And you have Rogan, I love him, but like a tatted up meathead going, what are you talking about? This won the Nobel Peace Prize for human trials. Like,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, it's one thing when, someone, like an enemy lies to you. It's another thing if like a family member stabs you in the back. And that's kind of the vibe I got from this. Like, oh, wait, like the red, white, and blue, like bad guys are here. It, I'm rambling now. I don't really know where I'm going with this. So, but yeah,
No,
man.
no, I think it's brilliant. You brought up a ton of great points. And before zooming out to kind of the macro point about the puzzle pieces, on the micro, as far as the ivermectin and Sanjay, Sanjay was pretty reasonable on Rogan, pretty reasonable. He said, well, maybe they shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
That said, it was like a week or two later, and he was
I,
on, they had that Sesame Street special where he's talking about, and I like Sanjay, I appreciate Sanjay. And he's based out of Emory, and where I trained. I don't know him by any stretch, but that said, then they're doing that special with CNN and Sesame Street talking about how you're going to prevent the spread. You're going to stop the spread. I can't remember the exact words, but it was very strong that these kids getting the shots was going to stop the spread to grandmas. And we know full well now that that is not the case at all, not even a little. So especially with time and that sort of thing, and one little tweak of the spike protein through natural variation or otherwise, and now you don't have the keys anymore because your body wasn't allowed to see the entire thing. So all it does is, the virus changes its hat, then nobody's got any protection anymore, right? And it seems that every system works the way in which it's designed, and that's kind of the way it's working out. They've got their passes set up for 6 or 8 or however many punch holes, on your way to the store and on your way to wherever they're taking us. We can talk about it another time, but the horse dewormer thing is kind of funny too. So aside from all of the fact that won a Nobel Peace Prize and all that, one of the things I spoke about at our Capitol when I was giving a speech was our anesthesia drugs, like every single one of them, are used by veterinarians for anesthesia for animals.
yeah.
So if you're looking at it from that perspective, you say, now I would never take it away from anybody. That said, but if all these journalists out there, so-called journalists, are out there talking about horse dewormer and how irresponsible it is to take, horse medicine for people to be doing this, right? And painting the narrative. I guess when they come in for their surgeries, we should let them know that we also use these on horses and, expect them to hold to their principles and just ask to go old school.
Yeah.
Because that would fit their narrative, because if it's used on a horse, it can't be used on a human. So I guess you can't have anesthesia anymore either. But that said, getting that message to them is one thing. But one last point on, the puzzle pieces. I think that's one of those things that we've been trained over time. There's some people who break through it, like you, Tommy, who just, you look for things, you see things that don't make sense, and you don't just accept it and move on and try to stay comfortable. You actually dig in and try to find out why. That could be a good reason, bad reason, whatever, but you want to know why,
Sure.
because everything does happen for a reason. And if, we talk about evidence-based medicine, I've been trying to tell people, you also, aside from that, which we're not living evidence-based medicine right now. It's more like mockingbird medicine, Milgram experiment medicine, whatever you want to call it. But we're just taking all of our cues. We say the evidence is whatever the CDC tells us it is. The interpretations of the study is whatever they tell us it is, rather than actually looking at the evidence for ourselves. And with so many great minds out there and great people who mean well, but a lot of these people have functionally become a part of the system and a part of the agenda, but it's too uncomfortable for them to look out and see that bigger picture. And it's also kind of hard because there's so many little pieces and they're all scattered, and some of them are quite scary. But what I try to tell people is that it's important. And the more of these pieces you look at, the more you will find that there's evidence well beyond reasonable doubt that these things are going on, that conspiracy is a real thing. It's a word for a reason. It's in court filings for a reason. Martha Stewart went to prison in part based upon conspiracy charges. Yeah, we hear the word and it's radioactive. We play defense. It's not a conspiracy. No, that's exactly what it is. 2 people planning to rob a bank. That's conspiracy for robbery. 2 people plan to, kill someone. That is conspiracy to commit murder. Anything has a conspiracy where 2 or more people conspire together, plan it. It's a separate charge in law. And so when they look at the evidence, though, they're going to find out that there is a great amount, well beyond a reasonable doubt, that there is a bigger agenda, that there's a lot of players in it. It's quite confusing. It's hard to discern all this stuff. They're not playing checkers. They're playing some high-level chess. I mean, you got world power, trillions of dollars, all these other things before we get into the darker side of the agenda. And they're not going to play checkers. It's just never the way they were going to play. And when you look at it, you will find that evidence says that our world's a lot different than what they've told us, and we've kind of led to believe. And we can either be comfortable as a society and as a bunch of educated people, and just continue to stay comfortable until it becomes so uncomfortable we can't do anything anymore to stop it because we have fed this beast the entire time. Or we can get a little bit uncomfortable to actually save our futures and save our children's futures. This doesn't end. If it's not clear to everybody by now, as you well know, I'm sure, Tommy, they're not going to stop.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop. There's no going back to normal. So we can make a better normal, or we can go where they want us to go. But I'd rather take the reins, be uncomfortable, and figure it out as best we can from far away, and then all work together and make this thing better.
Yeah, it's like that quote, change in the way you'd like to before you have to. So it's like, do the thing now before you have to. I mean, that's the other thing. It's not going to stop. And, on the whole conspiracy side note, for instance, 9/11 is objectively a conspiracy. Now, is it a cloak and dagger CIA, or was it 19 hijackers? Whoever it was a conspiracy. So just a little side note. And also, there are declassified papers from the CIA in 1972 saying to start addressing people who question mainstream narratives as conspiracy theorists, and then over time they'll turn it into a radioactive term. That's all declassified stuff. That in itself is a conspiracy. To label the term conspiracy as radioactive, I don't care. They call it conspiracy. I call it, I'm just looking at everything. If your truth holds up, if your truth is science, if I tell you gravity is 9.81 meters per second square, I don't say trust the science. Trust the science, Dr. Williams. What are you doing? Just trust it. No, I don't need to defend it. It's the St. Augustine quote, right? Truth is like a lion. You need not defend it. Simply let it out of its cage.
Yeah.
You can do your gravity experiments. You can get all your high-speed cameras, and you can put it in a vacuum, go to the moon and drop a feather. You can do whatever. And eventually you come back and you go, Tommy is telling the truth. It's 9.81 meters. It's just what it is. When you have to squash everything else, when you have to censor, and you have to censor these guys who are talking out about it. I mean, Dr. McCullough, Dr. Malone, Fareed, Tyson, Saeed, Hodgkinson, all these guys.
Yeah.
That is a conspiracy to shut all that down. And then furthermore, you don't even need to float out into the upper atmosphere of what is this, the mark of the beast? Is this an Illuminati? You can just go, well, hold on. What's the simplest conspiracy? Let's just not even go into the full dark controlling great reset. Let's just the simplest conspiracy. Follow the money. Are people making money off this shit? Right. I mean, I remember in college learning about enantiomers, right? And the professor always uses the analogy, enantiomers is what you can use to not only change the chirality, but you can also avoid your patent running out. You have modafinil, change it to adrafinil, change it to armodafinil. You just tweak it. It's the same thing, right? It's, do you want Zoloft or do you want levomilnacipram? And it's what's different. Well, the hydrogen atom's backwards, but it's $500 a pill instead of a penny.
Yeah.
At the simplest level, without even going into some, it's the global elite. At the simplest level, they're just making, excuse my French, they're just making a fuck ton of money.
Oh, absolutely. Tens of billions of dollars. Tell me that's not motivation for companies that have already been fined billions of dollars for shady practices, right?
12 years ago. 12 years ago. Pfizer, 2009. This isn't even that was 200 years ago. It was 12 years ago. It's right in the rear view mirror, $2.3 billion. We know it's there. There are also, you can go a little farther back, thalidomide, right? The birth control pill back in I think it was under the JFK administration. And it was, give it to everyone. And if you try to block it, you're a Nazi. In reality, it was well, no, we don't know what effects it's going to, or was it birth control? Whatever it was, it led to babies.
Anti-nausea medicine during pregnancy.
That was completely off. Regardless, it led to the births of flipper babies without limbs, but rather flippers. Yeah. There are these things right in the rear view mirror, right? I mean, the big grain company is paying off Harvard to make the food pyramid so that, hey, you got to have a ton of grains. 9 out of 10 doctors smoke Lucky Strikes. All this stuff is right there. That it's the simplest state. It's this. And when the spike protein puts on a new hat or puts on the glasses with the mustache, you can go, oh, roll out boosters, baby. That's money, money, money. But to perhaps not have people shut this podcast off and go, oh, here are a couple conspiracy theorists. Let's just keep it at the simplest level. I personally think it's much more dark and insidious and complicated.
There's evidence
There
to
is
put
a
them up
lot of
on that.
evidence. It's a lot of evidence, man. But
Yeah, we'll keep it here.
yeah,
We have plenty to talk about well before that. And that's what I
yeah,
tell people.
yeah. So and so it's not that I don't want to discuss that stuff. It's for the people who are on the fence. Let's just look at the simplest conspiracy. We won't float off. We'll go, hey, is there money to be made? Yeah, I mean, come on. Before 2019, there wasn't a person in the world who said big pharma is good, let alone a classically liberal person who's now dying on a hill to defend. I mean, Occupy Wall Street was what, a decade ago?
Yeah.
And so with that, what other pieces of evidence, what other phone angles of the final out can you talk about within your experiences as a doctor that, so with whether it's the rush for 100% vaccination or the removing of the hospital bed data inputs, what other little features are there that do stitch together the greater image of something going on? We don't have to say what the thing is, just say something is going on.
Yeah, I think that, and I believe Dr. McCullough, I've, had the opportunity to listen to some of his talks before. I think he says something, that's very similar to this, but all roads lead to this vax. And, when I look at it, and every single error, every exaggeration, every miscalculation, every way that a PCR test is tweaked, it goes up too high. Every single one of these elements, factually, demonstrably, full evidence, they always lead in the same direction, which is to this new mRNA-based therapy that never really made it through animal trials. And how is that even possible? Just from the macro level, it's really not. Now, from a more specific level, okay, you've got, I was looking at the natural immunity piece, the allergy, the PEG allergy, which, that was even in Moderna's SEC filings in 2018, that they may never even be able to bring their products to market because of the high risk of anaphylaxis from the PEG contained within their quote unquote vaccine. So they well knew about this beforehand, yet it's buried like 4 levels deep, in the fine print. And so the people administering don't know. So even if the people know they have that allergy, which isn't a whole lot, they usually just stop taking whatever topical or thing in there just doesn't agree with me. I get a rash. They move on. They never know it's PEG. But even if whoever's administering it, and those people, even if it's written on their chart, at that end user level, no one's going to have a clue with the fact that they never told anyone. And so that was, that's one piece. Another one is the natural immunity. And it always struck me just from a basic level. And I think people on any side of this, we're all on the same team. We just don't all know it yet. But when you look at that, everybody, it resonates, right? That natural immunity's worked. Again, it's not that novel. And it's a coronavirus. It's a beta coronavirus. So we know through studies and things that, there's multiple studies out there. So there's crossover immunity for a good, certain good percentage of the population. If you actually test them, crossover immunity from like cold viruses, which include other things like rhinoviruses, adenoviruses, et cetera. But there's crossover immunity at a baseline for some people, period. So why would you even take any risk? Now, further, you go into all the people that have had it. There's virtually no disease that we don't develop a really good and robust natural immunity to. I mean, if you make it through the first time. And, I think one of the things that's nice to point out here, I think we really should point out, because this gets conflated. And I've heard medical people from across the country, and I've heard some people say this. They say, we've known for 100 years that getting a vaccine is better than natural immunity. What they're doing is they're conflating something. They're taking the idea of, we give you a true vaccine and an attenuated or weakened whole virus that your body can pick out, your immune system can pick out all the pieces of, and you can figure out, what to do with that later on, versus you going to a COVID party down the street and hoping you make it through it with zero treatment whatsoever. And so that's what they're conflating, but that's not true. And also, you're not accounting for all the people, which, I mean, heck, the latest numbers I heard, 120 plus million people. So that's before the beta coronavirus crossover with the cold viruses. That's before all of that, let alone just your risk factors, period, 0.003% chance of dying for all comer kids. And they're astronomically low. So they're conflating that piece, but we don't have vaccines, public service announcements. We don't have vaccines. That's not what we're getting here in the States. Not at all. We're getting mRNA and or DNA-based therapies. We're not getting a true vaccine, which is a whole or attenuated virus, a piece of a virus, something like that. Now, what are they using in China? In China, they're actually using true vaccines.
Really?
They have 6 that I've seen recently. Yes, because a discussion that I had at one point was related to, well, how would China give their people and their soldiers this bad stuff if it was so bad for you? We know people are getting variable things in the shots anyway. We've seen the saline shipments and all that kind of stuff, but hard to discern a lot of that. But either way, so, I knew that they weren't giving them what we were getting here with the Pfizer, Moderna, and the Johnson and Johnson. And so I looked into it. Yeah. So they have 4 that are whole attenuated viruses, meaning like weakened, shouldn't be able to replicate, but then your body can figure out, every piece of clothing and, birthmark they have.
Yeah.
To figure out multiple ways to go at it. And then they had a couple that were based upon pieces of spike protein. They didn't turn you into a spike protein, which is pathogenic, as we know, causing blood clots, myocarditis, neurologic issues, etc. They just merely gave them some. So that's even a more reasonable approach than what we're doing, which is turning you into a pathogenic spike protein factory. And then it changes its hat and we make you into the next one. I mean, logically, ethically, scientifically, in every way, shape, or form, none of it makes any sense. And so, yeah, no, China is using actual vaccines. We are not. And people need to, it's the power of words, right? The power of the word conspiracy, the power of the word vaccine, the power of the word discredited, politics versus self-government, all these different things, same sort of thing that's important. And, one last thing, and I'll
No,
off
dude.
for a second, but, we even looked in 2008 at the 1918 survivors of the Spanish flu. And without even digging into the history of that, which I haven't done a lot of, I've heard there's a lot of shade with that, but don't know, but anything's possible. They tested those people. I can't recall how big the study was, but all of them, 90 years later, still had robust immunity to the Spanish flu. We know that anyone on the CDC's website, anyone who was even born before 1957, I believe, if you were just born before then, you were considered immune to measles, period, just because it was so prevalent. Everybody had it. And even if you tested once, you didn't have to go back and test for antibodies because, well, why not? Because we know that the immunity was still going to last. Now we have the issue of some viruses mutating a little more than others, but regardless, we still have a lot of crossover immunity that's going on as well. And, you never had to do anything. You didn't have to retest for measles if you had it, period. You just don't have to retest because your body's smart enough. They did a study from 2003, from the 2003 SARS-1 survivors. They did that last year in 20. So 17 years later, all of them still had robust immunity. All of them did. And many of them, I think all of them also had crossover immunity to SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 as we know it. So because again, it didn't just focus on a spike protein, it was also on an N moiety and some other areas of that virus. So we already know everything about history says that natural immunity works and works very well. Not that you want to go to you're 90 years old and you go down to the COVID house
Sure.
and get it. You actually do early treatments, you try to stay away from it, but all of these things are preventative with ivermectin or, what have you. All of those are better options than this, new mRNA-based therapy. And so that was, especially natural immunity. That's one I focus on a lot because it's so easily demonstrable. We're so ignoring everything we've known in all of history of medicine and even current. The studies now, even on SARS-CoV-2 are amazing. They say they've got 3 of 4, 95% of the people in one study that came out roughly January in Science, Nature magazines, and wherever else, said that 95% of these people still had robust immunity, 3 of the 4 different types of main immunity up to 8 months later. And likelihood is you keep that, your memory cells, T cells, plasma cells, et cetera. And the review on this study, so this is a very well done study, reputable institution, on the NIH's website to this day, you'll read the 2 bullet points on it. The first one says, the results of this study show that 95% had greater than whatever, robust. The second point says, the results of this study give us hope that the vaccines will have similar effects at producing long-lasting and robust immunity, i.e. stating what we've always known, which is that's the gold standard. Natural immunity, if you happen to get something, is the gold standard. And they're even admitting it, yet what they say in public to people, is entirely different than that. And they take two trumped up studies, one of them from Kentucky, which is a terrible study in terms of being able to draw a conclusion from the design. You could flip it on its head and it would come out completely different. It wouldn't even matter because the methodology is so poor. And those are the ones they basically push in front of all of our known history of natural immunity to say that, oh yes, these, quote unquote vaccines are better than natural immunity. And it's absolutely insane and ludicrous for any physician, one physician, medical student, anyone who looks at that, who has any clue, will see that it is a million miles from the truth. What they're trying to tell us about that comparison and about natural immunity and poo-pooing it and, sending into the dustbin as if it doesn't exist. Anyone would see it if they actually just look at it. They'll all see it. No one can literally disagree.
Yeah. I know I said I gotta go at 4. Can you go a little longer?
Yeah.
Are you busy?
No.
Oh, fuck yeah. Let's go for, so it's what, 11 till 4 my time. Can you go to like 4:30, 4:45?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fuck yeah. All right. Let me Hey, can you monologue for a second? I'm gonna text the next guest and be an asshole and push it back an hour.
Oh yeah. You monologue? Like
Yeah.
you want me to hang or you want me to say something?
Yeah, no, just talk. I always use the bathroom and go text someone, and I because I'm lazy and it's easier to not edit. I just say, hey, just I don't know, tell people your background, tell people why you want to get in medicine. I don't know. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay, great. Yeah, Tommy. So yeah, I just wanted to get into medicine. I think not knowing a whole lot of what was out there, period, just wanted to go out and, just the kind of cliched help people. Didn't really know a lot of ways to do that, but thought, hey, I can go try to be a doctor if I can, get so blessed to get in. And luckily was able to do that. And I've never regretted that decision for a day. Times are troubling, times are rough, but, I think God puts us where he wants us. Ultimately, and I'm very thankful and blessed for all the opportunities that I've had over time and the ability to teach and the administrative responsibilities I've been able to do and the ways I've been able to learn from that. And learning is kind of a lifelong process. And everyone, I think most of the public gets to thinking that as soon as you get a diploma, as soon as you pass a test, that, your learning is effectively complete. But there's always more to know, and you don't know what you don't know. So when I had residents in the past, I'd always tell them, you don't know what you don't know. Just keep reading. Keep looking for new resources. Keep looking for new things because you will find more. No one in any field of anything knows every single thing there is to know about their fields. So I think that also applies to what's going on in life. And, just because the media tells you, hey, there's no there, that's a conspiracy, throw a label on it. Or, you're done with your learning. Why, keep it simple, stupid. I don't know if that was by design or not, but effectively a lot of people run by that. Now, a couple of things, love and follow God, treat one another as you want to be treated, golden rule. Yeah, cool. Keep that simple. But otherwise, I think life's a lot more complicated, and it's also a lot more interesting and a lot more fulfilling when you do look into these things. You just have to battle past, the uncomfortable things you find along the way. So
Most of the times when I tell people monologue, a lot of them will just sit here and just stare at the camera. And the reason I don't do it is because it's I can't explain. It's really not interesting. It's so much easier to just not splice up the podcast. And to just make it one and done. It's just a whole headache. So that's why I don't cut it out. So thank you. Most people don't talk. Some people just sit here and they just give you the serial killer, like, the mugshot. And you're like, all right, little weird, but thank you. Yeah. So one thing you said earlier that I really liked, and I do think it's very important, and it's kind of the crux of everything that I stand for, or at least try to stand for, is we're all on the same team. We just don't all know it yet. And that, to me, that really is like the truth of all of this. When people are like, again, Tommy, why are you crusading against this? And I'm like, I want to find out what's going on. And if I'm wrong, dude, I'm wrong. And it's going to be embarrassing. There's going to be 100 episodes of me interviewing doctors, and people are going to look back and I'm going to be the flat earth guy. Hey, all right, no harm done. I'm an idiot. But when I'm looking at this, and it's the whole conspiracy thing. When you say all roads lead to the vaccine, that is why I always have a soft spot for conspiracies, because when you say you believe something's a conspiracy, people will often project what they think it is in their response to you. So you say, uh, I think the JFK assassination and subsequent report are a conspiracy. They will inadvertently tell you their own conspiracy. They'll go, oh, so you believed it was the CIA? I didn't say that. What I think is, was it the Soviet Union? And was Oswald a lone actor? And did we know it was the Soviet Union? We didn't want to escalate it to nuclear war. Well, there's one example. Was it not so much? I mean, the head of CIA counterintelligence, James G. Singleton, did have a file on Oswald going back to 59, 3 years before, 4 years before JFK was killed. Now, does that imply that he was an agent, or does that imply that they're covering it up because they're like, oh shit, we dropped the ball and we let the president get killed? It's my ass. Cover it up. That's a conspiracy. Was it the mob working with Oswald because Kennedy's brother was prosecuting the mob? That's a conspiracy. You don't, when you say, I think it's a conspiracy, that doesn't mean you think it's one thing. You just go, there's evidence to say that we don't know the full story. Was 9/11 a conspiracy? Sure, it's weird. How did 19 guys get through this? Was it Saudi Arabia? Did we cover that up to avoid World War III? Were there people in the intelligence agency that covered it up because it would be their ass if they went, we have $1 trillion budget and we managed to let 19 assholes with box cutters get us? It could be as simple as that. It could be nefarious as Dick Cheney pulling the strings. So when it comes to all of this, is like, just because you think it's a conspiracy doesn't mean, and you know, I get passionate, my face starts to turn red, doesn't mean that you think it's X, Y, or Z. It means you think there's something going on and you want to find out what is going on. And all you can do is very simply, the easiest way to kind of find out which way it's going is going, who benefits from this, or what were the actions that came from. So what happened with JFK gone? Let's not discuss how it got there. What happened with him gone? Well, we ramped up the war in Vietnam. We decided to keep the space race going with the Soviets, and the military industrial complex just went on unchallenged. Okay. What happened after 9/11? Well, we made $5 trillion for defense contractors, and we destabilized the Middle East and had a monopoly on oil. Okay. Just, you don't need to say what happened. What was the end result? Who benefited? So with this, you don't need to say, did it come from a lab in Wuhan as part of a warfare initiative to, you know, destroy us because of the trade war? Did it happen naturally between a bat and a pangolin? Did it blah, 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 blah? Just let's zoom out. And what is it leading to? And it's what McCullough says. Just zoom out. All roads lead to the vaccine. That doesn't mean you're taking a stance on what this is. That doesn't mean you're saying it's depopulation. It doesn't mean you're saying it's controlling the constricting movement of people, which is what I think it is. Doesn't mean you're saying it's just a money grab. You're just zooming out and you're going, all roads lead to this. Even if it really was just a virus that came out of nature and there's no conspiracy behind it, I mean, the end result is the same. Yeah, everything leads to the vaccine. So, but when the things that lead to the vaccine aren't as simple as it's a virus coming out of nature, when it's a coordinated suppression of science, the Trusted News Initiative, shutting down guys like Dr. Robert Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine, or Dr. Peter McCullough, the most published cardiologist in world history. When you're shutting down these things, when there's character assassinations against generics that cost pennies and have been studied for decades, like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, well, now when all roads lead to the vaccine, you go, okay, maybe it's not as simple. So I hope I'm kind of coalescing my thoughts, but we're all on the same team. I just want to find out why JFK was whacked. I just want to find out what, maybe the planes hit the towers because it really was as simple as, hey, we've been bombing the Middle East and they were like, hey, fuck you guys, I'm going to give you a black eye. It might be that. It might have been a bat and a pangolin getting it on. I don't know, but I want to find out why, not just for my own intellectual curiosity, but I just want to find out. And people that are against you finding out, man, like, we're on the same side. I want to find out why this happened. I want to find 99% of my most loved ones in my life have taken the vaccine. Like, I don't want this to be a bad thing. If I wanted that, I'd be wishing death upon all my family and friends. I
Yeah.
just want to find out what's going on. I'm kind of rambling now, but that's,
No, it's
does
great,
that
great.
get to what you were saying earlier with just all roads lead to the vaccine?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just evidence. I think we've been so you had a lot of good points in there, including, I think we've all been conditioned. You've been conditioned, you hear the word conspiracy and immediately it's radioactive. So even if you want to go look, you don't know where to look. You feel like you're going to get put on a list if you go look. And so hence there's a really big detraction. And if you mention to somebody like, hey, I'm kind of questioning what happened with 9/11. There was some weirdness in the story. There's a few verifiable things that were way too big of coincidences to not have been, coordinated. Then, you become radioactive yourself. Now you don't get invited to, golf or whatever
Uh-huh.
social event. And so there's a huge disincentive because we've all been trained to do that jumping, that first radioactive, turn away, mock anyone who
Mm-hmm.
mentions anything. Again, back to the countering criticism of the Warren Report, CIA document back in the day. I mean, they've been
Yeah.
studying this stuff for decades,
Yeah. Mock
and
them,
do it
laugh
very
at
well.
them. Yeah. Ostracize them. Oh, you're that guy.
Yeah. And then now in the medical sense, you get all those things. You get ostracized at a minimum. You lose your job as a reasonably likely outcome, and then you also might lose your license ultimately. And with those are very powerful detractors from people actually looking into it. And so it's much easier to kind of mock and think simplistically to jump to those conclusions. Oh, well, you think that this is the issue if you throw out a question. No, you kind of put words into my mouth. I'm saying that there's things that don't add up, and there's evidence to say that the official narrative that's coming out, that's being, mockingbird parroted across every, channel of information, is not necessarily true, and you can verify it. So why is that? It's like in some ways I equate it to someone with possibly like a cancer coming up, and they've got a cancer. They've got a few different, maybe they've got a cancer history in their family. Um, they've got a little bit of a cancer coming up, and then they start to notice some other weird things. And rather than going to look at it and trying to deal with it while you still potentially can, you kind of just like throw it under the rug and say, no, this isn't anything. This is nothing. It's just, I have a stomach ache. I've got this, it's just my diet, I think. And you can spend months and months doing that until eventually you're in a really bad spot that you can't turn around. And the same thing might go with an uncomfortable reality for people now, finding out that there are these other agendas at play. Yeah, it's hella uncomfortable. I've
Yeah.
had many of my moments with these verifiable type of evidence-based conclusions that I've come to over time. And there's still tons I'm working on, tons I don't know. And if the evidence says something different, I'll change my mind. As you said, if you keep looking and it's wrong, then that's fine. Like I wish that all
Yeah.
this stuff was wrong with COVID, right? You do too.
Yeah.
We wish that there was nothing nefarious going on. But you're not sticking your neck out there, and all these people are not sticking their necks out there with a whole lot to lose, like Dr. McCullough and Robert Malone and all these people. They're not doing it just for fun or to be contrarian. They're doing it because they're looking at the actual evidence, which is what most people have been trained not to do. And I just tell people, one of the more uncomfortable, do you think it's uncomfortable now to actually look into this stuff and start to put the pieces together? A lot of pieces, a lot
Yeah.
of pieces. Nobody knows the whole puzzle. We only know pieces of it, parts of it that we can see fairly clearly once you look for a while. But what's going to be really uncomfortable is, and I think God's going to help intervene here. And I think, things are going to turn out amazing. I think it's going to be rocky in the process, but for these people who don't want to look, these people who only want to mock, but they kind of have noticed that things are uncomfortable, things don't make sense. And there's a whole lot of things that don't make sense about our world in general before COVID and now afterwards. It's going to be really uncomfortable finding out that you didn't do anything to help and potentially something bad happened to your children, and you
Yeah.
promoted it and you put it on Facebook, and you didn't realize the evil that this could have come from at the very top. That's not the doctors down at the level pushing it and believe they're doing the right things and
Sure.
believe the CDC and FDA. But it's going to be really uncomfortable, not only knowing that you could have done something about it, also knowing that you mocked a lot of the people trying to bring it to you, to great loss for themselves. And that's not the biggest deal. We don't, I'd rather not have I told you so's. None of us would, right? And you're the same way, Tommy. And also that it really wasn't that hard to find. It wasn't that hard to find the information if they had just simply looked. That scares me. That scares me that someday I would look back and say, you know what, I didn't even bother to look because the media told me, the CDC, Fauci told me, even though they lied to me a million times, they told me that I should just trust them. And so I trusted them. And I took my kids and, the future of our civilization down this pathway, and I could have
Yeah.
easily found it.
Yeah. And that's not to say that, everyone that's against what we're saying is in on it or a bad person. I mean, I,
Oh,
I think McCullough said it well. He goes, I think 99% of people that got the vaccine aren't doing it to bash other people over the head. They're doing it because they're being taken advantage of. They think you think you're doing the patriotic thing. It's right after 9/11. You see something, you say something. You don't, it's not that you're like, hey, I'm part of the police state now. You go and join the TSA. You're like, yeah, my cousin's whatever died in the North Tower. I'm gonna do my like. What am I doing right now? Why am I interviewing all these people? Is it because I'm part of the rebellion and we're part of ivermectin? No, I legitimately think there's something going on, and I want to try to expose it, and I want to figure it out at the risk of avoiding something much greater. And it's that's one thing, and it's very uncomfortable. There's no fun part of this. I mean, I literally have an American flag behind me. I'm the biggest rah-rah American there is. I have on all these special forces guys. I love it. I'm biased towards it. I think we're the greatest ever. I get it. I am the stereotype of the USA. Like, I get it. And I know it, right? This is my sports team. This is the one I cheer for. I love it. I understand that. Man, it's not comfortable going back and looking at something like September 11th. Like, it's not, you don't want to be that guy that's, oh, you think it's this. No, but if it truly is objective, hey, Tommy, gravity is 9.81 meters per second squared. And Dr. Williams, go look into it. That's fine. But when you start to look at it and you go, all right, was there anything weird about it? And you're like, oh, all right, well, right off the bat, a year before it, the Project for a New American Century said, absent a new Pearl Harbor, America will lose its standing in the world. And you're like, all right, well, maybe that's a coincidence. How come the morning of, we were running an operation called Operation Vigilant Guardian, where we were running a practice run for what would happen if planes were hijacked?
wow. Didn't know that.
September 11th, 2001. Vigilant. Now, granted, let's play devil's advocate. We had also been doing an Operation Vigilant Guardian every year for about 10 years, but they changed. Sometimes it was about a naval invasion. Sometimes it was about nuclear war, but little odd of all days, it was that day about planes being hijacked. So when they did have to scramble NORAD fighters, they said, is this real world or is this a drill? Odd things. Again, a cover up might have been, I cannot believe, maybe the terrorists outsmarted us. They found out we were doing a drill that day and they're like, hey, let's mirror the drill. It might be that. I get it. It might be something much darker. Regardless of what it is, both outcomes, either, oh, the terrorists are a lot smarter than we thought, they're not just idiots in a cave, or our own government perpetrated this. Both outcomes, and it has to be one of them because that's an objective fact. We were running Operation Vigilant Guardian on that day. They're both uncomfortable. One says they're not idiots in a tent in the middle of the desert. They're very cunning. The other says, oh my God, did we do this? It's not fun to go up to it and look at it. It's much easier to go, oh, it was a bad day. It was a day that will live in infamy, but we got them. It's not fun to look at it and go, all right. I always bring this. I lost a brother to suicide, and I knew he was, in a bad place for several years. And I tried my hardest to help him. So did my parents, so did my brothers. But there's also, it's easier to say in hindsight, what you should have done. But at the time, you don't know. You can't just go in and say, hey, we're taking you home. You have to look at it and you're like, is this, he was getting a graduate degree at Georgia Tech. It might have just been really stressful. Like, I don't know that. I don't know what's going on in your life. The hard truth is I have to go, right after you protect yourself and you go, mental illness is a disease. There's nothing we could have done. And that's very true. I do believe that. But you also have to look back and go, the reality is there's probably more I could have done. Could I have done enough to prevent it? I don't know. but it's not complete. I can't completely wash my hands and go, mental illness is an illness. It's not an aneurysm that just happens. Could I have, and who knows, maybe I go back in time and we run that simulation a trillion times and I go, oh, wow, this really was inevitable. I couldn't have done something. But the reality is, could I have visited him one more time? Could I have been more firm? Who knows? And maybe the answer is no. But that's an uncomfortable thing. I don't like doing that. I was pre-med in college. This is what I wanted to do. And I meditate every day. And I started to realize around my junior year that, hey, I might not be too happy. And I don't push that. I don't want to look at that. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to have a white coat, Dr. Carrigan. And it starts coming up more and more. Man, I don't want to address that. This is what I've been doing. I've built myself around this. This is going to be what am I going to do? Change my major my senior year? No, I'm going to be a doctor eventually. And like you said, you can address it now when it's uncomfortable, or you can address it in a year when it's a lot more uncomfortable, or you're going to be forced to address it one day and you won't even be able to change it. So I straight edge kid, I smoke pot occasionally, but I always got bad anxiety. I went into the belly of the beast the day I graduated college. I went into the woods with my best friend. We took some psychedelic mushrooms. I've been terrified of psychedelics my whole life. I was like, I'm going to go crazy. But I was like, let's get down to the core of my soul. We went out there and we sat in a field on a sunny day. We meditated for like 7 hours. And I went deep down inside and I looked it in the eye and my soul said, hey, you don't want to be a doctor. And that's okay. You can go do something else and love what you do and still work hard. Not only that, you could still help people. And I came out of it on the other side and I went, oh, wow, I don't want to be a doctor anymore, but I can still, and I felt new and I felt, and then granted, it was 7 years of unimaginable terror of trying to find out what I wanted to do and build a podcast and get it to work. But man, I look at it now and I'm like, I'm 31 now. By now, I'd probably be a physician. I'd be finished with medical school and residency. And I'd still be, going to bed every night and going, oh, fuck, I'm really not happy. What am I going to do now? Or even worse, what could I have done? What if I had just said, screw it? Let's start a podcast. What if I had said that? And that will eat at you forever. And so these are my own personal experiences. I understand they're not the same as a global pandemic, but the process of discovery is, I believe, almost identical. It's uncomfortable. No one wants to do it. You don't, when there's a knock at your door, you hope it's the mailman and not, I don't know, someone saying, hey, your family's dead. You don't want that. When the lights go on behind you, you don't want to get pulled over. And then you realize the cop rushes by you and gets the guy in front of you. And you're like, fuck yeah. It's uncomfortable, but you have to address these things. And again, like, it'd be so much easier to still be on YouTube and growing my podcast into a business. Instead, I'm going, let's fall on the sword and interview these doctors like Dr. Williams. And we're going to sit here and talk about verboten. It's mRNA therapy. It is a bioweapon. It's part of a global plan to shut down human movement and then control people's thoughts and actions. Everything you're saying, and I know I've been ranting for like 10 minutes now, but everything I'm saying is the same as you. Like, dude, we're all on the same team. And furthermore, I don't want this to be true, but we've got to start looking at it. Because in the end, if it's so much worse than what we think it is, being embarrassed by your friends, getting called out is going to be the last of your worries. Hey, I get it all the time. Friends that haven't talked to me in years will go out of their way to talk to me, to tell me just how fucking crazy I am. Dude, you're spreading misinformation about COVID. I knew you thought 9/11. Hey, man, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like being around, family members at holidays and they kind of roll their eyes. Hey, it's this. It's not fun. It's a very effective tactic to shut down discourse. No one likes to be laughed at or hear people talking about you behind your back and you got to fucking pretend you don't hear it. It sucks. But you know what sucks a lot worse? Not doing anything, letting the evil arise, and then going, well, I could have fought it, but I was really embarrassed about being called a whack job. And I mean, it's so those are all my experiences, and I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. Just start looking now. Just start looking and find out for yourself and let the chips fall where they may. And maybe, maybe it can't be stopped. Maybe it's a global plan that can't be stopped. Man, at least go to your death knowing you tried. Like, even if it all goes to shit, at least make your peace with your own God and go, hey, you know what? I tried to stop it, but it was a totalitarian system of control, a century in the making, perpetrated by $1 trillion governments. I tried my hardest with my webcam. Like, so you get what I'm saying. I'm kind of rambling now.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, so many great points again. And, speaking to your brother as well, first, sorry to hear that. It's just a
Sure.
terrible
I appreciate
tragedy.
it.
But as far as you looking back, I mean, I think it's always a good exercise to look back on anything, even our successes, to see if there's anything we could have done better, not from a bad perspective. Everyone thinks that any sort of criticism is something bad and to be shied away from because, again, uncomfortable. But that said, I think the bigger piece of that story was that you were trying. You were trying, you were trying, and you were trying more. And a lot of people right now aren't even trying. We're not trying to see, do we have a cancer within our society, for instance? Do we have a cancer within the higher levels of our government? That doesn't mean well for us, that's growing, that's metastasizing. Go back to JFK, for we are surrounded around the world by a ruthless monolithic conspiracy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Guerrillas by night, not marching armies by day. Yeah.
Yep, conscripted vast amounts of resources and people, and including scientific community, labeled off, rattled off, all of the military, etc. And if that was happening, and he's saying that in 62, I believe it was, did that really change? Did something like take that down over time? We've heard about it. If that was going on, people actually need to just start trying. And it starts with trying, and then you find a better way, because there's a lot of you. Here's one thing that's an optimistic note, in that no one believes that a really cancer cures could be hidden, right? They don't believe that there's all these great things, or maybe these great technology out there that exists, that they would really hide it from us. You can't believe that that's even possible unless you already know or believe that evil could truly exist. When you look at the evidence and you see what's been going on, you see the links they'll go to, and let's just keep it at money, what they'll do for money and or keeping control of an industry. There's not much of anything these people wouldn't do. And so if you can break through this, rather than going the path that we seem to be headed, which I think is going to get turned around, but the path they want us to go down, the narrative and the illusion makes it look like. It's a lot of real world too. People want to take that always to the extreme, right? But there's a lot better world that we can create in so many different ways if people open their minds and kind of get out of this box. I tell people, and there's plenty of evidence to say that, we are living in the matrix to a good degree, most of us, at least in some parts. And I can go through like clips of videos, books, then people talking about it, all the proof going through the entire thing about how they create the matrix and how we self-sustain it.
Yeah.
But they didn't leave the keys and the tools to break down the box within the box. You have to reach outside of what they tell you is normal. You can't go to that discredited site. Oh, you can't use Telegram. That's only for, domestic terrorists. And, the furthest thing couldn't be from the truth. When you're interacting with the truth movement, right? It's so rare. It's almost non-existent. When you hear people talk about even needing to do what our forefathers said, shed blood at the foot of the Liberty Tree, there's pretty well no one that even says that. People are looking for truth, and they're looking for peaceful solutions everywhere. People have to get over the narrative. They have to not jump to conclusions. You were spot on too about when they kind of reach really far with the conspiracy. And so many times you'll hear, so let's just keep it the COVID. They'll say, oh, well, surely all these doctors, all these nurses everywhere aren't a part of this conspiracy. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
They're just a part of the we believe in the narrative that's been crafted to create the conspiracy. And they're the enforcement arm while they think they're doing something good. Okay. So you don't have to be like a mob. They're on a need to know basis. Some people are running probably packages places. They don't know what's in them. Like in the government, within the military, people, they're so highly segmented, they don't know, and they keep it that way for a great many reasons. So when people say, oh, conspiracy, my brother or sister, or my dad's a doctor, you're telling me they're a part of the conspiracy? No, they just happen to be influenced by the information, the people that are puppeteering it. If we go into that pathway and that evidence trail, And that's how you do it. You don't create conspiracies by telling every single person a plan. You do it by having the mechanisms by which you get people to believe in certain things and using the human condition to manipulate them into executing your plan. That's what they do. They've studied it for over 100 years. They've studied it quite well. It's brilliant. It's ingenious. Again, they're not playing checkers.
Yeah.
So people have to get off this all or none conspiracy thing too. Once you even get past the word, yeah, that's not it at all. The people that were giving, thalidomide back in the day, they thought they were helping pregnant women with something that they called, I can't remember the exact terms they used, but I remember watching some documentaries on it. And of course, we studied it in medical school. And they were basically saying it was like super safe or like could not hurt you. It was these very flamboyant
Safe
propaganda style, safe and effective type things that they would say. And so all those people giving it to their pregnant wives, to their pregnant patients, they're not a part of a conspiracy, but they just didn't really, and maybe they didn't have the ability. Like information now is easier for us to come by than likely it was back then for them, right? There wasn't the internet. There weren't ways for people to go around mainstream media like we have now. And so you can't really blame them, but people really just need to get off of this all or none, black or white, left or right, God or science, the in-between is where most everything lies. And the more we get society awoken, and I think every day everybody becomes a little more supple, right, Tommy? And more people who have gotten this injection still get COVID anyway, still spread it to their family anyway. I mean, I'm sure you can recount many stories too. I can recount them right now with multiple families at work and abroad. Is they become a little more supple to realizing that maybe 95% effective, relative risk versus absolute risk reduction, et cetera. Again, everything's manipulated. They realize, okay, maybe there is something more to this. And then maybe we'll start listening to Tommy. We'll start listening to this Dr. McCullough. He did have pretty excellent credentials, right? Those are the kind of people that you want to at least keep an open mind to. And then things will continue to shift and God will continue to work, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of going against the grain. Again, you got to get outside that box, look like you're crazy because you're not doing what everybody else does. But if it's truth, it's truth. If you got cancer, you got cancer. You better deal with it.
Yeah.
Or else it's going to consume you. So let's just not let it go that direction.
Yeah. It's a lot of things I want to touch on there. Yeah. I mean, one is, the whole conspiracy. You would think every doctor is in on this. No, I don't think every doctor is, they log in at night on their encrypted phone and they're like, the plan is going. No, it's, hey man, all it took was a couple higher up Nazis to say that Jews are subhuman. It's okay. You can kill them. And if you don't, they're going to kill your grandkids. I had on a couple weeks ago, Richard Rhodes, that Pulitzer Prize winning author of Making the Atomic Bomb, one of the most famous books ever written. He has another book called Masters of Death about the SS Einsatz group and the mobile death squads that would come in after the German army invaded. They would come in like a week later and they'd round up all the Jews and kill them. It was the precursors to the concentration camps. And you always have this image in your mind of, oh, Nazis, these are the most evil people. And hey, full disclosure, they are. But when he was writing about the Einsatz group and how they would line up these women and children in front of ditches and then shoot them, a lot of them would start to break down and they would have to grab each. And in your mind, you have this comical, they're all evil, Sig Heil. Yeah, all the doctors are in on it. And you read their journals and their actual testimonies at Nuremberg, and hey, by all means, they did the crime. They should hang. They should hang. They should have hung. They did hung, and they should have. But a lot of them broke down, and they'd have to grab each other and go, and hey, Hans, why are you crying? I have a wife and kids at home. Why? This isn't war. Shooting. I don't think it's war either. But the higher ups say, if we don't do this now, these kids are going to grow up to kill our kids. All right, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it. And to me, that is so much more. And when I say that, people get, understandably, they go, dude, are you humanizing the Nazis? Yes. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's even more evil. If it's evil enough that this happened, so the Nazis are evil. What's even more horrific is to go, hey, man, they thought they were doing the right things. And I'll say it for a third time. They're Nazis and they should be shot dead. But they thought they were doing the right thing. And their commanders would go, I know this seems like a gross order that we need to shoot these 30,000 children, but we're doing it for our kids. And they would all So a lot of them were drinking, they're doing cocaine. They're like, all right, we'll do it for, and a lot of them would commit suicide. And that's actually what led to the concentration camp. Side note, wasn't because it was more efficient. It's because they realized they couldn't keep having soldiers do this because they're breaking down. So that they did all these psychological experiments. So if you put them on train cars instead of having to herd them out at gunpoint, if you put them in showers with no windows, you wouldn't have to shoot them. If you had other Jews pull the bodies out and then put them in pits or crematoria without German soldiers doing it. So the whole creation of the concentration camps wasn't actually because it was more efficient. It was slightly, but that wasn't what caused it. It was because these guys couldn't carry out their plan. So there is an existing quote unquote conspiracy that no, it took a couple guys at the top. And I'm not justifying all these. Good, nuke them. I don't give a shit. They're Nazis. But you look at that and you go, oh, wow. Just like Dr. Williams and I think we're doing the right thing. These guys thought they were doing the right thing. So when you look at that and you go, oh my God, that's what led to this. It's so much easier to go, they're comically evil. They played with their mustaches and said, Hail Satan. I'm sure some of them did. But when you look at the fact that these guys actually thought they were doing the right things, to me, that is far more terrifying. Because now you look at, people today think they're doing the right thing. I work for this big tech company and I'm squashing all discussion over here. It's the right thing. It's not, ha ha ha, stupid white people, although I'm sure there are some of them. A lot of them think they're doing the right thing. When they say telegrams for white supremacists and domestic terrorists, not only is no one talking about refreshing the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants, if you bring it up, there is normally a wild backlash against that. People are like, fuck off. Hey, it's a Fed. It's a Fed. No one here wants this. No one's taking up guns. Whenever anyone says, guys, it's time to get guns, everyone goes, dude, shut up. Just shut up. We just want to find out the truth about what's in the vaccine. We should all take up guns and go to DC. Everyone's like, dude, get the hell out of here. They are more against this shit than anyone else.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying is, no, it's not this grand coordinated thing. It's people that think they're doing the right thing. And just like the people who think they're doing the right thing by censoring you or reporting you or administering the shot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We also trying to find out what's going on. Like you said, we're all on the same team. We think they're doing the right thing. We need to find out what the actual right thing is and do it. And I know I kind of went on a whole convoluted analogy there with the Nazis and the Einsatzgruppen, but also what you said about enough people kind of get a little more malleable to it. You go, there's no such thing as fake news. And then you see the Covington kids thing, you go, all right, well, Rittenhouse did shoot 3 black men, and then you find out it was 3 white guys, and one of them tried to kill him. You go, all right, it was a little weird, but all right, and, next thing, and then you start to see one by one, and you go, this is a little odd. Well, vaccine safe and effective. You can't get COVID. Okay, you can get COVID, but you can't spread it. Okay, you can spread it, but you won't go to the hospital. Okay, but you won't need any more shots, but you won't need a booster, but you won't need a second booster. There are these little things that everyone starts to. It's that uncomfortable thing. You go, all right, I could have addressed this a year ago, or now 3 shots in and wearing a mask, and I'm still a little uncomfortable. The whole purpose of this people becoming more supple to it, malleable to it. They also don't, and this is another tactic of top-down control, they don't want you to know that you're not alone. They want you to think, it's just you, Tommy. It's just you and Dr. Williams. It's just you and Dr. Williams and Dr. McCullough. Literally no one else thinks this. Okay, maybe Malone as well. All right, maybe his 400,000 followers. Okay, maybe it's most people. They don't want you to know that you are in numbers. They want you to think it's just you and no one else. And as more people, and they have the top-down control with big tech censorship, you can make people think it's just you. It's no one else, right? Why did they get rid of the dislike button on YouTube? Because every video just got ratioed. We need boosters for kids. 100, like buttons, 137,000 dislike buttons. There's a reason you get rid of it. They don't want you to know that you're not alone. Because when you're talking to people, I do a podcast every day. All right, there's one person. Maybe someone comments. There's another thing. Maybe I talk to someone at Walmart. I'm only interacting with a handful of people a day. Even if they all agree with me, That's only 5 people. What they don't want you to see is you go on YouTube and you go, hey, I think ivermectin works, and it gets a billion views, because then you start to go, oh, like we're rolling deep. Like we're an army. We're not a couple of fringe guys.
Yep.
So there are all these things. And so you might be asking yourself, well, how do we fight against this? It's very simple. Just do your part, play your position, because there is a critical mass. I don't know what that critical mass is. I'm sure only a supercomputer could figure that out. There is a point when enough people talking out against it, or expressing their own viewpoints, or deciding to take one on the chin and go, you know what? You guys can think I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't care anymore. And then another guy goes, actually, you know what? I'm with you, man. I do think it's weird. That Warren report is weird. JFK did give a weird communist speech right before that, only 2 years after Eisenhower gave the military industrial complex speech, which itself was 28 years after General Smedley Butler gave the Wars of Racket speech. There maybe is something going on. It turns into a groundswell of everyone to the point where it now becomes, you can start to reverse their own tactics. You now start to become the outcast if you don't think it's a conspiracy. Oh, look at this asshole. This guy actually thinks it's safe and effective. Like, you can use their own weapons against them. It can go back against them. So I always try to kind of bring it around to, like, what can you do if you see, you know, there's a suicide epidemic, right? There's 22 veterans commit suicide a day. It's very daunting to look at. I'm not a doctor. I can't figure out what's wrong in SSRIs. And, well, what can you do? Do you have a friend who's down? You can talk to them. What do you do about the Great Pacific garbage patch in the ocean that's like bigger than Texas? I can't go out there and fix it. I don't have a boat, and I'm scared of the ocean. What I can do is, go to the gym and I see like a water bottle on the ground, pick it up and throw it in the recycling dumpster. It's a little thing you can do. So what I always try to bring it out with these podcasts, where we're talking about these grand global this and that, and it's the presidents are talking about it. And, well, if JFK got killed, what the hell am I going to do about it? Well, there are little things you can do. And the first is just say what's on your mind. You're going to get made fun of. They're going to attack you. But if enough people do it, it gets harder and harder to attack. It's you, it's me, it's McCullough, it's Malone, and then, oh, it's Nicki Minaj, oh, it's Joe Rogan, oh, it's Aaron Rodgers. It starts to gain to now where the nation of Japan is utilizing ivermectin and destroying COVID cases. It gets bigger and bigger, and it steamrolls shit. I get lost in my own rants. I don't even remember where I was going with this.
Well,
so.
there's so much to talk about. So, and all of your rants are good, Tommy. So I like all of them. So, I think, you brought up on a really good topic too. And it's the illusion. Okay.
Yeah.
They really have crafted and worked hard at creating an illusion. And people say, oh, they own all these, 6 companies control 90% of the media. And then we have clear evidence that they coordinate many messages.
Yeah.
And it's video evidence of verbatim whole segments of the news over and over again across every station.
Yeah.
So, and including local news broadcasts. So you've got all this stuff there. They have the ability to create the illusion, and people say, oh, well, they own, these certain parts of government, and they have these trillions, they've got whatever. Well, guess what? They have to create the illusion because we so outnumber them. If there is a them, and there's plenty of evidence that there's at least some of them that are actually planning and in on plans of various forms, but they can't even remotely hope to control us if people actually know the information and will look through the deception and the trickery. If people know, like, oh, I get on Telegram and there's going to be millions of people on there that are looking for and spreading truth as best they know it. And of course, there's things along the edges you're like, no, I don't agree with. Well, use your discernment.
Yeah.
Because if there's this thing called discredited, oh, that website's been discredited. What does that mean? So they were wrong once, so you can never listen to them again in your entire life. They'll never have anything factual or helpful to bring to the masses they're trying to reach ever again. So by that measure, all of mainstream media has been discredited 1,000,000 times over. And including, before you even get to their stolen valor stories, like, Brian Williams and Dan Rather and whoever else did that.
Yeah.
So, the ways they kind of paint us into these corners and this illusion is wrong. I mean, have I been wrong in my life? Absolutely. None of us are Jesus, right? He's not walking the earth. So all of us have been wrong. That doesn't mean you're discredited or like, I can't ever produce anything of value to anyone again. Or, a good friend of mine was wrong about something I thought was important once. That doesn't mean he doesn't have amazing things about the rest. So people need to, get rid of this messenger versus message, that illusion too. They need to like use critical thinking, quit trying to make everything so simple. Look for all these patriots and other people out there who are trying to help people, and they're trying to at least find out what's going on for all the things that don't make sense. There's a reason for everything, but that illusion is the only thing that really keeps us in check. Telegram's not dark web. Using a DuckDuckGo web search, or maybe Brave, I haven't looked into that one, but using those searches and using those things is not the dark web. Virtually no one will tell people to go onto the dark web to go look for information. You don't even need to. You can find so much great information without that much effort. It does take time to piece through it, but you can find stuff, and you can find it pretty quickly on whatever now with all these mediums that we have. The illusion, they'll put me on that list and they'll get me. Yeah, they do that, to one or two people around the edges, but there's millions. Yeah. There's absolutely millions. They're not going to likely get you. There's so many out there, and that illusion keeps people from looking. And so when you break that down, and the illusion of powerlessness, we can do so much more, like you're saying, like on a daily basis, just a little bit here and a little bit there. Whether it's you gaining a little information, spreading a little truth, whether it's you, praying, reading your Bible, talking to other people about salvation, that sort of thing. Everybody can make a little bit of a difference every day. Nothing happens like movie style where just randomly, all of a sudden you have some giant, revelation that happens. That's not the way it works. It goes through hard and persistent effort that is, jeered along the way, as you're dealing with as well. People think, trying to discredit, Dr. McCullough and company, when there's nothing there to discredit. And he's speaking of evidence and evidence upon evidence. And that illusion is the one thing that keeps us in check. When you break that illusion, you realize that we're way stronger. That also, even the conspiracy angle, they've set that up. And you look back. So I like to show people this, and I randomly found it while I was trying to put out some information on Facebook and just wake some people up. Now, right behind me, no, she's not in this one, but Lady Columbia was like the patron goddess of the US. We were, the poetic name for the US was called Columbia for the longest time. Hail Columbia was our de facto national anthem, unofficial, until 1931.
Really?
She's on tons of coinage. She was on everything. Girls and mothers dressed up as her on July 4th. She covered our nation. She was the centerpiece at the Columbian Exposition, which was the 1893 World's Fair. And this, I think it was the opposite end, probably where I am, this picture that I just, stuck as a background. And she was the centerpiece as you looked out onto Lake Michigan of the first, electrically lit by Tesla, not by Edison, he beat him out, World's Fair in history. And Lady Columbia was it. And so, I'm trying to show people things on there just to expand their mind. Hey, there's a whole lot of stuff that could be all around you. I mean, I was wearing a Columbia jacket earlier today, I think. Yeah. And that all, you see Columbia with a U, that's where it came from. You can search it back, Columbia Records, Columbia Pictures, on and on you go. District of Columbia, right? All of this is all based out of there. But there's a lot bigger world that could be around us every day. And just because everyone around us doesn't know it, doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't mean it's not verifiably true. And one of my favorite ones that I ran across that I tried to put some people through for the very small reach is Operation Northwoods, which you're probably familiar with. And so it's one of the absolute best. 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff were proposing to JFK, and he turned them down. That was a year before somebody got him, right? Yeah. Okay, somebody got him. And or somebody or some group or whatever. I don't know. I haven't dug into that one as much, but clearly something was going on. So from there, what they did is they were proposing all the different ways they could do false flag exercise. People say false flag. Well, that's false. No, false flag just meant the conclusions that were drawn or the people that an event was blamed on were false. That the whole point is to actually create some sort of change through various means. And on this, they wanted to start the war in Cuba. They wanted to start a war with Cuba, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So they said to JFK, they put all this whole list of things they could do. And if you look into and just take a few moments to think about the level of the deception and trickery of that operation, well, you technically call it a project because they never actually,
Yeah, they never
I guess,
did it, but
operation, they never did it. They were talking about pretending like we stormed and attacked our own base there in Guantanamo Bay and blaming it on Cuban operatives, tossing over mortars over the wall, doing other things. There talked about downing ships, downing planes. 3 different cities, they talked about actually staging real terrorist attacks in the US and killing American citizens, bombing them even. In
Miami
Miami,
setting off car bombs outside schools, libraries, and movie theaters.
yep, Miami, DC, maybe New York or Washington or something like that. But either way, they talked about doing this. They had no problem killing, and then they were going to blame it on the Cubans every single time. And so just to start a war. Now, who would have known about this stuff? Now, there's more to it than that because it's fascinating. They were going to actually do fake plane downings.
Yeah.
They were going to have a fake
drone
plane go up.
airlines. Yeah.
They were going to switch out tail numbers and say that this pilot died when they had just really given him a different name,
Yeah.
identity before he went out. Then he came back down, but then they downed a plane later. They took a commercial airline and they were going to put it demanned. It was going to be a complete drone plane in 1962. With its own, recorder box, sending out a signal, Mayday, Mayday, a Russian MiG that the Cubans are coming after us, boom. And that way all the other countries would report it and it wouldn't just be the Americans
Just
reporting
us.
that this had happened. So then the fake funerals, the fake rescues. Now here even goes to the part of the conspiracy that I think is just fascinating here. And to say that not everybody's in on it, very few people are. They were even going to, I believe it was for one of the fake or real bombings of some ships there around Cuba. If it was one of the fake ones, what they were going to do was come up with a submarine, I believe it was, they said, throw out some plane parts. That way, when the troops that came to assess the scene could report that indeed, yes, our plane went down, we saw the pieces in the water, we couldn't retrieve, the pilot, whatever it was, or the captain of the ship and the crew, whatever it was, that even the people there on the ground were under the impression and the belief and would go out there and tell people safe and effective. Or
U.S. servicemen. Yeah, U.S. servicemen go, yo, this isn't a conspiracy. There's actually a plane here.
Exactly. And that is the level of deception and trickery from 1962.
Signed off by the whole Joint Chiefs, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Lemnitzer.
Exactly. I'm glad you know the name because I didn't get those. But that is to tell people you have to understand that conspiracies usually occur in small spaces. Yeah. And this is a lot more nuanced, just like the Nazi discussion and the Nazi war criminals, right? Even I just read the other day, but I haven't looked into it much, so don't quote me, that even before they invaded Poland, apparently the Germans false flagged themselves to tell the Germans that the Polish were a danger. They even had to false flag the German people to get their consent to go to war.
Reichstag fire as well. I mean,
yeah. So they have so many of these through history that says that most of the population is not in on the conspiracy. Do they support it, accept it, acquiesce to it? Yes, they do it through means of trickery. And this is in quotes from a guy named Edward Bernays talking about how governments are only government by the acquiescence and the consent of the public. That's the only way they can govern. And so they use propaganda and other deceptive tools they've studied so well in order to create and manufacture that consent. And so that's how you create an entire Nazi Germany. So many people that didn't go along with it, but they also tricked them and made them think that Poland was a threat. They said the Jews are going to infect you and or kill your kids. They do this on a mass scale, and it's been the same playbook, very crafty, but same playbook every time. And so if people look past the illusion, they actually find out the game, then you can stop playing it. It's not so hard anymore. You stop playing the game and you realize that we're all together and it's easy. Once we all stand up together, we get knowledge, information, and we won't be perfect, but we'll know the main story and we'll be able to fix all this stuff. So I have hope that we're getting there slowly but surely. And hopefully less, losses in the meantime, and we can stop these vax mandates and the children, sooner than later.
Yeah, no, I have overwhelming optimism that things will work out. I just do. And perhaps some of it's faith, maybe some of it's just my own brain, making me think it. But I legitimately think it will be better. But that is something I always point to. Yeah, it's Operation Northwoods. You go through all of this, and it's what I mean, it is a conspiracy, but it's not a conspiracy in the modern sense of, oh, you're crazy. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. This
Mhm.
whole thing went through. This whole and got to JFK and he said, kind of to paraphrase him, the fuck is this? And get rid of it, right? But that's what he wanted, man. But
Yep.
that went all the way up to that level, which is just absolutely insane. I think another thing they wanted to do was they actually had captured some like MiG radars, and so they could actually even put MiG electronic warfares and signatures. So yeah, other nations that detected it, not just us, would go, oh no, that's MI6 would see it and go, no, that is like a MiG electronic signature.
Yep.
Man, this is back when black and white TVs were a hot product. So
Yes.
the idea that the idea that a virus could be released for at the bare minimum to make killer profits.
Mhm.
And at the next level, I mean, maybe it's not even a let's take the next level up, but not quite as high as global control. Why not? Why not Operation Northwoods versus China? We're looking at China. We're looking at their trajectory. We're looking at their how fast their economy is growing. We're looking at their Belt and Road Initiative. We're looking at how at one time the U.S. had a greater military budget than the rest of the world combined, and then the rest of the world combined except for China. And now China is slowly creeping up to now where they're bigger than a lot of other nations combined. Maybe we're looking at it, and China's smart enough to not attack us, right? 100-Year Marathon by Michael Pillsbury, as well as Stealth War by Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who I've had on this podcast. The Chinese call it "Don't ask the way to the Emperor's cauldron," basically meaning when you're the young buck coming into your own, don't challenge the lion. Just wait for him to get old, and then you take him. If you ask him,
Yep.
"Hey, are you feeling weak?" Well, he's going to know what's on your mind, and he's going to kill you. So you just wait to the head of the pack starts to get weaker, and then once you are just zero chance of you losing, then you go in and kill him and you take the throne and you have the harem and blah blah blah.
Yep.
Maybe we look at it and we're evaluating all these. We go, hey, China, we're poking them and they're not dumb enough to attack us. They're going, hey, America's getting weaker. They're declining in the education system. Give it another generation or two, we will overcome them. How about this? How about we go? All right, they're not going to fight us. Let's. Hey guys, I got an idea. How about we fucking release this virus next to the Wuhan Institute that studies coronavirus? We'll kill like 1 million of our own people. It's whatever. We'll do all this stuff. Hey, and we'll make a pretty penny on the side. We'll have a smaller side conspiracy. It'll be vaccines. We'll make our own retirement fund there. And then the big picture is we'll wait a couple years and then we'll trace it back. And just like MiG electronic signatures, hey, how about we use our hyper powerful NSA, CIA? We find out what are some like sequences that they only have in Wuhan. Well, what if we just plug those into this thing? And then in a couple of years, it doesn't even have to be us. It can be independent researchers from all over the world are going to start finding this and sequencing it and going, just like the guys finding the plane parts, they're going to start going, hey, this has some sequences that are native only to Chinese labs. Bada bing, bada boom. All of a sudden, we're going, hey, we got to have war with China. I mean, then that is less crazy than Operation Northwoods.
Yeah.
So there are
Yep.
tiers of conspiracies. Bottom line is like, or bottommost one is they're just trying to make money, just trying to fucking make money,
Yeah.
which is pretty much non-negotiable. That's just that's undeniable fact. They're trying to make money. I'm trying to make money on this podcast. Like, what's not? The next one is war with China, Operation Northwoods. And then the granddaddy would be a top down system of global communist technocratic dictatorship control, which General Smedley Butler warned about in 1933 when he was approached by the JP Morgan family, as well as Prescott Bush, father of who? George H.W. Bush. And they said, hey, how about you take this big bonus army of upset World War I veterans who are camping out in front of the Capitol long? They all trust you. They love you. You go take out FDR because FDR is a fascist. What they really wanted to do is remove FDR because FDR is getting rid of gold-backed currency, which directly imposed all their money. Smedley, you're going to be the emperor of America. That is all fact. The highest ranking, the most decorated Marine of all time went in as an enlisted man and was one of the only guys to ever be alive to receive 2 medals of honor. He found out about it and said, no, fuck y'all. I don't want anything to do this. And now we don't have, it's called the business plot, capital B, capital P, business plot. Go look it up, 1933. grandfather and father of 2 presidents, as well as the JP Morgan family and I believe the DuPont family. 28 years later, General Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, oversaw the largest amphibious invasion in world history, became the president, set up the whole nuclear bunker system, top dog of them all. What does he come out and say on January 17th, 1961? Beware the military industrial complex. What does JFK say a year or two later? For all we are opposed around the world by blah, 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 to enslave every man, woman, and child. Yeah, man, it starts to get a little hairy. So whether it's money, next level up, whether it's an Operation Northwoods Part 2, or whether it's this thing that has been echoed from JFK to Eisenhower to Smedley or 1919 Woodrow Wilson, for there is a machine so tight knit and so efficient that the wealthiest men in America barely speak about it above a whisper. I'm paraphrasing him, Woodrow Wilson. There's evidence of all these people going, there is this thing building in the shadows, and it has been for a century. And I'm just completely rambling now,
No,
Dr. Williams.
no, but I mean, it's good because, that's good evidence that you're talking about there. You're not talking about, Tommy on his podcast or, Aaron from his doctor position and he just randomly went schizophrenic in his 40s.
Yeah.
You're not
cracked.
talking about us. You're talking about the heads of state, the presidents, and let alone beloved presidents, some of them of the United States of America, that are saying the same thing. So it takes a high level of cognitive dissonance to just dismiss that. There was nothing to it. And did it just drift and dismiss itself and kind of go away over time?
Military industrial complex just got tired and went home.
Yeah, they didn't make any more money. They just, they decided they would hang it up. They didn't like all that control and power and money, and nor did their heirs. And
JFK said no, so I guess that's that.
Yeah, I guess it's done. And they didn't decide to unretire in '63 after he went down. I doubt. So yeah, it's following where the evidence leads, and wherever that evidence is, whatever the truth is, that's what we need to deal with. And the more people we get out there and just look through the evidence, you start to see the picture and you go, wow, okay, these things are possible. We need to look with a questioning and discerning eye at stuff, trust but verify. Who said that? Reagan. You need to trust but verify. Like the doctors, okay, you can even trust the CDC if you want to tell you that these 2 studies trump all of known history, including current studies that say how great natural immunity is and crossover immunity among the beta coronaviruses for this new novel coronavirus. You can, okay, cool, trust them, but go ahead and look at the studies. Look at those studies, look at the methodology, look at the downsides to those different studies, and then look at the other studies on the flip side of it. And then you determine for yourself whether or not you think that, the evidence is good or bad, that they're giving us good advice. Are they or are they not? Are they good at evaluating studies? Maybe they're just really poor at evaluating the studies. But either way, you need to look. Once we find that, once you look at the evidence, we can then live in an evidence-based reality rather than one that's just based upon, the popular public belief and the mainstream media narrative.
Yeah. It's kind of like, we got to wrap this one up in a minute, but it's like, it's kind of like that, the Rendlesham Forest case that the Air Force Base in the UK that was partly American run back in the 70s or 80s. It was one of the most famous UFO sightings. There's a great book about it by Nick Pope, who is the British Ministry of Defense's head of UFO, I guess, investigations, who I've had on this podcast. But there's a quote from, I forget who it is. It's Lord. He was like a 5-star admiral in the British Navy, Lord Norton. I think he's dead now, but he had a quote about this where he goes, listen, one of 2 things happened in Rendlesham Forest. Either there was a UFO sighting above a base with nuclear, they had nuclear weapons on the base. It was a nuclear operating base, B-52s. There's either a UFO there, in which case we need to investigate it, or 20 different men all hallucinated simultaneously, men who were in charge of nuclear weapons. Either or, something's going on. So that's kind of how I look at all of this. It's like either this truly is the craziest quantum shift paradigm change in medicine, important to look into, or we're getting raw dogged by some evil people. Hey man, either or, we can't just go meh. And lastly, I'll kind of wrap it up with this, and I would love to have you back on sometime, man. You can go all in on conspiracies. Is when you see all of this and you go back to Woodrow Wilson, Smedley Butler, yeah, and not just presidents, beloved Eisenhower, JFK. When you go back to all these guys and you see all these kind of hints, right? You could almost say that like those are the cell phone pictures of the final out of the World Series. But it's Woodrow Wilson, it's Smedley Butler, it's Eisenhower, it's JFK. You're starting to get these, they're decades apart, but you're starting to get these pictures from the few guys that actually have a view of the thing to take a picture of.
Yeah.
When you see all of it, what it implies is just an unimaginably evil and coordinated and brilliant, though evil, a brilliant system, but unimaginably evil, coordinated effort to enslave and destroy people. As light implies dark, as up implies down, as good implies bad, as sobriety implies getting hammered, as a day where you go to the gym and you eat healthy also implies the opposite of, Thanksgiving, waking up and eating chocolate pie. Everything are opposites. And the more you see of one thing can only imply the more of the other. The higher you can shoot a cannonball, the faster it's going to come back down. So when you see this evil of all evils, you can only imagine that there must be a good of all goods. There must be something, just like something scared Eisenhower and JFK out of their wits. There must be something so miraculous and beautiful and loving that it cancels the other out. So that's why I have hope, is if that exists, the other has to exist, because everything is just a mirror of itself. And now we're going far into philosophy and everything.
No,
but
I agree. There's a lot of good out there. And I think aside from, even the people we know about that are in the movement, I think, humanity is more good than bad. I think many are deceived. We've all been deceived in some way, shape, or form, and probably still are to some degree, no matter how much you've dove into the truth. But I think that there's probably a lot of factions out there, hopefully working towards the same end and bringing about a better world and a better place and battling through this rough time.
Yeah. Dr. Aaron Williams, thank you so much for coming on here, man. I'll
Absolutely, Tommy. It was a pleasure.
It'll be uploaded later today. I'll email you the links and stuff. I'd love to have you back on sometime, and we can I'm so happy you knew about all these conspiracies. Northwoods, for we are opposed. My man. You can kind of tell. I always do these like sort of subtle dances with guests. You kind of like toss out like a lower level conspiracy. You're like, let's see if they know about it. And then the other guy picks it up. The other guy picks it up, and you're like, fuck yeah, let's go into this shit. you go all in. And you're like, all right, yeah. But yeah, man, I gotta run. I got another podcast in 5 minutes, which I'm an idiot, and gotta do this one now. Thank you so much for coming on here. What?
Sorry to cut you so close to time, but Tommy, it's been a pleasure, and I'd be happy to come on again sometime.
Hell yeah, man. No, you didn't, dude. I asked you to go an extra hour. This was fantastic. This was fun as fuck. I'd love to have you on here again. I'll email to you. I gotta run. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. God bless. God bless everybody. God bless America. Do the right thing.